Okay, well, thanks, Kay, for that introduction. And well, yeah, welcome to everybody this morning. When I decided that I was going to go for it with the theme of this morning, I really wasn't sure what the response would be. I felt in myself it was very relevant. It's something that I always feel is relevant, I think, but especially at this time with the demands and challenges of this time. So I kind of put it out there in good faith, and it's lovely to see people have responded to that. So we have this theme of good grief this morning, and I am going to speak for a little bit. The shape of the session will be that we will have a bit of quiet time just now, just to settle and kind of come into connection with the theme, with, you know, the opportunity just to be together. We'll have a bit of a quiet, reflective interlude to go into the session. Then I will speak for a bit. I've got something to say. I hope it won't be too much. I sometimes feel like I can't think of anything to say, and then it kind of goes in the opposite direction. And actually there's quite a lot. So I'll try and stick to my notes so it won't be, hopefully, too overloading with the verbal input. But the main thing for me, I think, is that we have this opportunity to be together with whatever this theme means for each of us individually, and just rest together. So I wouldn't want to call what we're going to do to conclude the session meditation in a more formal sense, although it might feel appropriate to think of it in that way, or to bring elements of more formal practice into it, but just more of an opportunity to rest together in the kind of collective space with what this theme means for us and our own kind of personal experiences, just to have a sense that, well, I'll say a bit more about this, that there is connection, that we're not necessarily alone with some of what might be difficult in our experience, and maybe in our more private experience at this time. So as well as my own words throughout the session, I'm also going to include some poems. I'm so grateful to people that have that gift with words, because I think they can convey something that can be so helpful for us as a kind of gateway into the complexities of being human in all its fullness, you know, but especially around these these more challenging aspects of our emotional life. So I will be including some poetry. What I would say about anything that I'm offering is just take what's there for you, and if it doesn't feel like it sits right, feels right, then that's I guess there's just something about just being able to let that be, and just be with what does feel right in those moments, if what's being said or shared isn't resonating for you. So it is just an offering on my part. But let's just take some time to settle in and still ourselves a bit. This word resting I've been using a lot. So rest in the more obvious sense of just taking time out and just dropping the other demands that there might be for us, but resting in the sense of stopping, just and staying with, but in a kind of gentle way, not in a way that's kind of pinning us down to the extent that we're actually causing ourselves well, maybe more upset than might be kind for ourselves. just to say that. So we've all had our versions of the morning, whatever we've been doing. Been hearing a little bit about what some people have been doing before the session. But we've all been having our mornings and whatever mornings are like for us. So just this opportunity to gather ourselves in a little bit and settle down to where we're into our place where we are right now. So I will kind of lead us a little bit, but if there are things that you know for yourself that are helpful to do in terms of just gathering and settling, then just do what feels helpful and right. So just taking some moments to make ourselves comfortable. You might want to sit or lie down or just whatever feels like it's going to work for you just now. So just letting the sound of the bell invite us into this quieter space, this opportunity to still and settle, gather ourselves in a certain sort of way. So we can find our way to the sensations of contact in the body that help us to know that the ground is there beneath us. So whether we're sitting or lying down, and whatever we're sitting or lying on, which is where we will be feeling those sensations of contact, what we will be feeling the sensations of contact with, just knowing that ultimately beneath it all, there is the earth. There's the ground beneath us. So this is an opportunity for grounding, to feel our connection with the earth, our little spot on this great planet. And those sensations of contact helping us to know that we're supported, that the earth is there. So just taking some moments to feel our way in whatever way feels right for us. Having a sense that the weight can drop and that there's very little effort to be made, at least in physical terms right now. We can have a sense that even though we're not able to be in the same space at Dharna Kosha right now, we are supported by the same earth. In some way, we are still sharing this experience of being together. Although we are a bit more dispersed, a bit more situated throughout space than we would be if we could be together in the same building. So knowing that we're supported, having a sense of sharing space in some mysterious way, still. Perhaps feeling the movement of the breath a bit more fully as the body settles. Perhaps that gentle rhythm can help to soothe and settle us a little bit more. With the breath coming in and going out. And as we still and settle, perhaps having a bit more of a sense of how we are this morning, how we are more generally, and perhaps how we are in relation to the theme of this session, if there's anything that has already responded, is responding, coming alive in anticipation of the explorations that we'll make together for the next little while. And we can notice if maybe this response, or just how we are generally, means that there's some tension around in the body or in the mind. And just seeing what happens if we meet any of that with some kindness, gentleness. Perhaps there can be a gentle invitation to soften in particular areas of the body, including the head, the brain area. And perhaps that gentle invitation is enough for an opportunity to let go a little bit more, to relax a little bit more. But if that isn't the case, then just seeing if it's possible to let things be. Just let things be as they are, with no pressure. Just that kindly attention. And remembering that the earth and the space around us receive us just as we are. There's no expectation or judgment or need to be any different. So seeing perhaps if we can meet ourselves also in that spirit, doing what we can to encourage ourselves to still and settle and soften, but appreciating how we actually are without trying to force anything to be different or making any judgments of ourselves if they can't be, even if we'd like them to be. So just a few minutes to really rest into this time together, settle together. So I'm just going to conclude this little quiet interlude with a poem by Denise Levertov called Talking to Grief. Ah, grief, I should not treat you like a homeless dog who comes to the back door for a crust, for a meatless bone. I should trust you. I should coax you into the house and give you your own corner, a worn mat to lie on, your own water dish. You think I don't know you've been living under my porch. You long for your real place to be readied before winter comes. You need your name, your collar and tag. You need the right to warn off intruders, to consider my house your own, and me your person, and yourself my own dog. Oh, grief, I should not treat you like a homeless dog who comes to the back door for a crust, for a meatless bone. I should trust you. So just taking some moments to transition from that quieter shared time. And in a moment, I will begin to share what I have to say. Okay, so I'll be speaking for the next little while, and then we will have another opportunity to do something similar, just to kind of tune in with ourselves and our own experience, and with a few more poems just dotted through. So, good grief. I was very struck by the lines. That's why I read that first verse again when it says, "Oh grief, I should not trust you like I should not treat you like a homeless dog." And then that verse finishes with, "I should trust you," which is quite a strong thing to say about an experience that isn't necessarily welcome or enjoyable. But there is something in that. I think that's why I felt the need to kind of repeat it again. And I think it kind of tapped into something around why I wanted to theme this morning's session around an opportunity just to explore grief and what it might mean for us, especially at this time. So over these weeks and months of this situation, with the virus and lockdown, etc., there have been so many resources that have been made available in all kinds of ways. I'm speaking mainly about online, I guess. I was amazed at how quickly life just took on a kind of online cyber dimension in a way that it hadn't done for me previously. And it might be that yourselves also have been tuning in with what's on offer. I mean, just with Dana Kosher, there's been, my phone's making noises. Sorry, I forgot to switch it off. Yeah, just the program at Dana Kosher, Kay and others have done such an incredible job of making sure that there are really helpful resources there for us to tap into, and there's been so much. I mean, even I might say I found it a bit overwhelming, the amount of things that I could do. At the moment, I'm actually doing an online retreat with Tara Loka. I don't know if any of you are doing that. I've taken time out of this morning's session so that I can do this, but they're recording their sessions so I can pick that up again. And a lot of the emphasis of what's being offered has been to really encourage us to cultivate kind of positive, robust and resourced capacities in order to be able to meet the challenges of this situation. And to me, that's very welcome. I do need those reminders and those encouragements, you know, that there is resource, there is strength, there are capacities of heart and mind to draw upon, that you know, I am finding for myself, but also really appreciating the encouragement of the resources that I can connect with. So all that is very appropriate and welcome. But some of my more, I would say, private experience around what's going on, I kind of haven't quite known for myself what to do with that sometimes. And it's kind of felt a bit like I need to be putting the focus on cultivating all these other more positive, you could say more positive qualities. But then that leaves something feeling a bit unmet in me, which is kind of why I wanted to offer this morning. And I think what I've been feeling is that, yes, it's really important to turn towards the capacities that we have and encourage them and support them. But there's also something about giving space to the whole range of emotions and responses that we might be having to this particular situation, but also life in general. And I guess there's stuff around grief that can feel very personal and private. So in a way, it might feel that that's the work that we do more alone or by ourselves. And that might feel more comfortable actually in some ways. But I think for myself, I have noticed something around that, something around the loneliness of that, you know, just brave faces being kind of shared, but knowing that I'm not the only one that's probably going through other aspects of my emotional landscape also. So we might feel like we're the only ones that are experiencing particular emotions, and it might feel that well, in my own circumstances, that well, I'm not being so directly impacted in the ways that others are. I'm not working on the front line. I'm not. I haven't been ill myself, and I haven't. I've had a few friends that have had and recovered from the virus, but it certainly hasn't had the impact on my life that I'm really conscious that it has on others. So when I was thinking about that, what came to me, and some of you will be very familiar with this story from the Buddhist tradition of Kisa Gotami and the story of the mustard seed. So this is quite a strong story of one of the women who actually ended up becoming one of the Buddha's followers. She became a nun, but only after she had had the very painful experience of losing her child. And she was encouraged by the Buddha to, in order to receive his help, to find a household that had not been affected by bereavement, by death, by loss. And what she discovered was that it was impossible. She couldn't find a household where that was not the case. So I was thinking, well, it is a bit like that with this situation. Whatever our personal experience is, we are all having this experience in our own personal way. So even though it might not look like somebody else's experience, in a way, we're all being touched by it. So it's I think it's significant to kind of acknowledge that, even if, like in my case, I kind of feel like, oh well, you know, I certainly am not experiencing it in the way that others are, in a much more difficult way. So I also wanted to say that grief might not be the word that really resonates in relation to these more difficult aspects of experience in relation to the situation. So what I would like to say is that, well, just, you know, find what works for you. If there's a response that comes up that, well, actually, you know, what I would say is this, what I would think is this, feel is this other way of naming it or using language, then this is just an entry point. You know, this word grief is just a way of kind of opening up into this territory. So so that's my encouragement also, just to you know, if you're feeling like, well, I wouldn't exactly call my experience grief, but there is something around, you know, a kind of impact on the heart, then, and maybe that's all it is. Maybe there aren't words for it, but, you know, we have what we have in terms of language at our disposal. So just kind of doing what you need to do with it so that it sits right for you. So this experience of being impacted, it may sit alongside all the ways that we are responding more positively with the resources that we have to bring to bear on the situation. So I don't want to feel like it's a kind of either or thing, you know, or kind of be presenting it in that way. Either we're coping really well, or we're, you know, we're experiencing all this other stuff, because I think it is a spectrum. It is a spectrum of experience, and I think we can really kind of acknowledge and appreciate the more positive aspects or qualities that we're finding within ourselves. But I don't think that means, I don't think that's negated by spending some time with these other experiences and feelings that may be part of the situation for us also. I just want to just maybe share some personal examples because they may resonate more collectively, but obviously the invitation is for us all to be kind of tuning into what is happening for us at this time, or has done, or may do. So, so when I'm talking about grief and loss here, yes, we have the very stark experiences of a bereavement, you know, of losing a loved one. But those experiences of loss might be a bit more nebulous. They might be a bit harder to pin down. It might be difficult to really know what it is we feel we've lost or are grieving for. And there might be an opportunity here just to tune in with that a bit more fully in a helpful way, I hope. So some of the reflections that I've had around why personally I have been finding myself feeling quite upset at times, tearful, you know, physical sensations around the heart that I would associate with sorrow, with grief, with loss, with pain. Some of my reflections around that are that well, I know it's different for everybody. I'm aware that some people have carried on working, have been called upon to carry on working throughout this time. Personally, I found myself with more time and space than I was anticipating. So in a way, I kind of feel like, well, maybe there was a bit more room there for things that I've just been sitting on to arise in me. So there is that opportunity to kind of attend to things that if my life had carried on at the pace and with the commitments that I was expecting to have, that wouldn't have been possible. So there is an opportunity there to kind of maybe look after ourselves in a way that the more usual life wouldn't have offered. But then there's the kind of double edge there of maybe feeling more deeply than we were expecting to, and then having to manage that. So so that leads into another little reflection around well, as Dharma practitioners, we understand very well that impermanence is something of the nature of reality that we're finding through practice a way of being in greater alignment with, or kind of making friends with a bit better. But I'm always caught out by the impact of it. You know, it's kind of like I have this kind of more intellectual capacity to go, yeah, of course, all things are impermanent, you know. And then there's these whopping examples that show up in my life that I find it quite difficult to get to grips with. You know? And it's like, why am I so surprised in a way? You know, it's only reality doing what reality does, but I have this kind of funny relationship with it all that's fine with it as long as it's a bit kind of removed, you know. And then when it comes crashing in, it's hard, you know, it's hard. So some of my feelings have arisen because I did have this idea of what my year was going to look like. You know, I had various retreats that I was looking forward to at Dharna Kosha. At this time, usually I would be preparing to connect with Buddhafield, which is important to me, but obviously Buddhafield aren't able to run their events at the moment. And as well as losing those opportunities for those experiences, there was something there for me about a loss of role. You know, it's like I do the things that I do because they give me a sense of being able to offer what I feel is important and what I hope will be of benefit. And all of a sudden, that wasn't possible in the way that I had expected it to be. And although other things have arisen, like this more online way of being, there was something to grieve around that. And actually there still is for me, because I don't know what the future holds. You know, I also work as a massage therapist. That seems to be a complete no-go at the moment, you know. So so not only is that a work, there's stuff around work there, there's also how I experience touch. That's been hugely impacted, not just in my professional life, but one of the things that I feel a slight grief around is all the different ways that people are responding to this, you know, and there are some conflicts there, just in my kind of more personal situation, you know, people responding to these things in different ways that you know, it's quite difficult. There's some kind of conflict in me around what's happening around me, you know, and seeing also on the news what people are doing with that, you know, and that's painful. There is some, I don't even know if I would call it grief, but it's certainly painful. So yeah, for myself, there's stuff about not knowing when I'll see friends and family. I've got family in England. I don't know, you know, really when I can feel like I can make contact with them again. There's some pain around the kind of ethical dilemmas, which ties back in with the kind of touch thing. You know, obviously we all want to feel like we're doing the right thing, but there are just so many different responses to what that is, you know, in each of us. So different responses in terms of different people responding in different ways, but also maybe conflicting responses inside of our own being that throw up confusion and for me a kind of helplessness that I really yeah, that causes me upset, you know, that feeling of just not knowing what the right thing to do is. You know, there's some grief around that, you know, as a Dharma practitioner, you know, looking to the precepts, I want to feel that I'm behaving in ways that are right and aren't going to cause suffering, but that in has got very complex in these times, you know. So so there's stuff around that for me. There are other things that have got added into the mix, you know. I'm thinking of maybe some of the biggest situations that some of us have maybe felt very aware of. The situation around the man who died in America and everything that's come from that, the kind of Black Lives Matter movement and all the issues surrounding that have really kind of come to the fore in the midst of an already complicated situation. I feel like there's something around that also that personally not, well, obviously I'm not impacted in the ways that other people are because of who they are, but still feeling that in the sense of our collective experience as human beings and how history and so on and so forth have played a part with all of that. There's some grief around the complexity of just simple things, you know. It's like just going for a walk round here and getting in a real tizzy about, you know, if I go for a walk and I open a gate, you know, and then kind of like, oh, I'll touch the gate, you know, and it might sound daft, but, you know, I really wouldn't want to feel that someone else is going to touch that gate and you know, I've left anything behind. And also, I don't want to pick anything up, you know. So there's this kind of complexity that that just really can be hard to hold. And I've said already, you know, some of us may be very directly impacted in terms of our own health and the health of loved ones, and that is massive. You know, that's more massive than I'm having to deal with. So I really do acknowledge that. And if that's the case for any of you, I really do acknowledge that. And there's also just to say, just something about the uncertainty of the future. I mean, and again, we're back to this, you know, these truths, these dharmic truths, you know, in a way, and I've said this in a previous session, there's nothing that different from what is usually happening at the moment. It's just that it is more writ large. But I think that those uncertainties, the things that we might have felt a bit more confident to take for granted, where it's really clear how unclear it is at this time, you know, and that's something to kind of sit with as well and to rest with, that impacts the heart. So I've done my usual thing of having lots of notes and not enough time to say everything. I'll just say a little bit more, and then we will have this back into some quiet time with some shared poetry. So just a quick dip into another aspect of Dharma around what we understand of suffering. So suffering is something that we're really encouraged to consider in the tradition. We have the first noble truth that there is suffering, but we also have, and some of us may be familiar with this, teachings around how we can compound suffering for ourselves. So we have the teachings of the poisoned arrow and the second arrows as examples of the ways that we take this direct hit that is unavoidable, you know, whatever it is, you know, this kind of primary experience of pain, grief, suffering. And there's something we do with that. that actually can make it worse. And I don't want that to sound, I don't want to set that up in a way that makes anyone feel worse. You know, I don't want this to be a kind of second arrow for anything that anyone's experiencing. But I do think it's worth really looking to our practice and our understanding, our dharmic understandings, as a way of not compounding things any more than they need to be, not compounding difficult emotions and situations any more than they need to be. So the way that we can really offer that to ourselves is by the practices that we know of mindfulness, of loving kindness. In fact, I wanted to say that that actually letting ourselves feel these deeper feelings, they might it might feel perhaps like a bit of an indulgence, but actually they are a gateway. I think tuning into our own sadnesses and sorrows and griefs and sufferings can become a gateway into a greater connection with the understanding that that's the same. It's not, you know, in terms of the details, it's not the same, but it is a universal human experience. And we see that reflected in practices like the Karuna Bhavana, the cultivation of compassion alongside metta. So it can be that actually turning towards our more difficult experience is a way of practicing more fully. You know, if we have these aspirations to be a kindly, steady presence in the world, by being open to the whole spectrum of experience, that can actually be an asset, although maybe not the most comfortable one. So I think that's all I've got to say. Before we move into this final 15 minutes or so of just sitting together again, and I'll share these poems. So just to say that as we sit together and connect in, and if the imagery of the poems raises anything, if there are kind of second arrow elements, aspects to experience, then just being gentle with ourselves. You know, that wasn't meant to, what I said wasn't meant to imply that we need to stop that sort of thing now. You know, I think there's just something about recognizing that it's happening and holding that in kindly awareness that can just make a bit of a difference and give ourselves a bit of space and leeway. So yeah, I just invite you to settle back into a comfortable position. I know it can be tricky making these transitions between kind of input and then a more open space. So just taking a minute or two to find your way back into wherever you'll be most comfortable, and just a settling down. So what I find helpful myself at these times of, if there's a real upswell of what I might describe with the kind of primary experience of it is like the kindest thing I can do for myself. So there's something there around really connecting in with the sensations in the body. It can really help to put, especially in this time of restricted touch, which may be impacting some of us, a gentle hand on the heart or the belly. So it's like we're offering ourselves that nurturing touch. And to hold the content of our minds in kindly awareness. You know, sometimes our minds are like runaway trains, and sometimes they're just frozen. by the impact of whatever's going on, and just being able to almost bear kindly witness to ourselves is really a kindness that we can offer to ourselves. And I do think through that we're a bit more available for similar experiences in others. You know, if we can meet that in ourselves and there's less fear around that, then we're less fearful around other people's experiences too. And that opens up our options for responding. Okay, so time's getting on. I might not have time for all the poems, but just taking a few deep breaths. Maybe closing our eyes. Just feeling how the earth receives us in our entirety, whatever state we're in, whatever mood we're in. So just taking the first few minutes of this quiet time to turn towards our own experience. I shared some of my own thoughts and reflections around the impact of this situation, and that may have touched something for you in response. There may be resonances there. There may be things that feel very different for you. So perhaps in the spirit of the first stage of the Metta Bhavana, turning towards how we are and holding ourselves with kindness, with gentleness. The well of grief. Those who will not slip beneath the still surface on the well of grief, turning down to its black water, to the place that we cannot breathe, will never know the source from which we drink, the secret water, cold and clear, nor find in the darkness the small gold coins thrown by those who wished for something else. anatomy. Certain portions of the heart die and are dead. They are dead, cannot be exorcised or brought to life. Do not disturb yourself to become whole. They are dead. Go down in the dark and sit with them once in a while. So just maybe having a sense of how, if there's anything that we need, knowing that the earth is there to support us. The space is there receiving us. And the gentle rhythm of the breath is there to soothe us at any time. Kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out of the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in the white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans, and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows, and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. So just gently transitioning again out of that more reflective time. And I just want to finish by saying thank you so much for being here this morning. In the title of the session, I said that it was called Good Grief, the courage to feel. And I think it does take courage to turn towards these more difficult aspects of experience. So I bow to your courage for being here this morning, and I just would encourage you to go gently through the day, especially if you feel that this has touched into anything. If it is possible to give yourself more time and space and care at any point, well, not just for today, but at any time, I think it's really important. And I wish you all well. Sorry for running a few minutes over, but I wish you all well. And thanks again to Dana Kosher and Kay for this opportunity.